Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, in accordance with Resolution 2-2012, your informant Scott Stilson, Vincent Drive, is recording tonight's meeting for posting on YouTube. This meeting is also available being recorded electronically on the Zoom platform. I see we have a few people who have joined. Good evening.
We have 3 people on Zoom.
All right. Welcome. All right, we'll start off with the open forum for the agenda items. Do I hear any questions on this side of the room? On this side of the room? Yes, please.
Valerie Schultz, 165 Caitlin Court. About the Saldo amendment, hopefully you have received my suggested edits. They were,
Can I, because there will be a public hearing at which time the residents all get to address Saldo items before enactment. So, if your comments are on that, it probably isn't that appropriate because we did advertise a public hearing as we're required to by law. Not to shut you off, but there will be an opportunity at the moment before Saldo discussion for public comments on that piece of it.
okay.
Yes,
I'm a little late,
go ahead.
sorry. Good evening, Debbie Elmer, 256 Gulfwood Drive. The Saldo ordinance is going to be voted on tonight, which will be enacting rules and regulations. Along with most people, I have read the Saldo ordinance, and I'd like to say I don't need to provide any input, as I have confidence in this committee. What I do want to say is these changes will be enforcing the new rules and regulations of the Saldo ordinance. I request the same enforcement of the Honeybrook Township rules and conduct, like I said, next week. So I just want to say, can we please read that before the meetings? Because I personally am hoping for that we can be productive, controlled, and stay on topic in our meetings. Thank you.
What is your request? What was that last request?
That we can just, personally, I'm hoping that we can be productive, controlled, and stay on topic in our meetings.
Very good.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I see everyone back here. Go ahead.
Clarence Whitfield, 75 Ridge Road. An item from last month's meeting. Number 6, Vernon McIntyre. This man come before the board a few years back and had this residential property zoned commercial. Now he wants to combine it as a commercial and residential. He's in a floodplain, number 1. He's got wetland. He cannot cross with a highway by EPA regulations. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Do you want to make sure it's on Zoom?
Yes, thank you. Any questions or comments on Zoom? All right, let's proceed to our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda in full?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I did have one question though on the manager report. As far as the village green, we were talking about final inspection in 2023. Is that still on target?
I believe Mike has notes in his engineer's report. We're still waiting to hear back from the developer. So again, we're doing what we can to ensure that we get that final punch list going. But just to let you know that our engineering firm and the management office is trying to get that, but I don't think we have any.
We've had very little response from the developer,
Yeah.
so I would anticipate a sort of recommendation to increase their financial security plan for 20 years as well, which is coming up in October, November.
Thank you. All right. Let's go to our department reports. And, okay, first I have the board of supervisors. That's what time we got.
Again, that's just if any board has, member has gone to any of our local COGs or anything like that, or has dealt with the county, wanted to give a report back to the board of maybe activities that have occurred at the, yes, yes, we just.
Sorry, carry on.
We all,
Never mind.
we all,
Tracy,
yes.
motion.
And then I just came back with a question on it
Yes.
after we go out.
Okay, that's okay.
Tracy made the motion. Laura seconded.
Sorry.
Okay. As far as the COG, yes, we have a meeting last Wednesday of the month. We're discussing an EAC for the COG. There was also a scholarship committee that they formed. Also, there's the Western Chester County Chamber of Commerce. They have a monthly breakfast meeting, so I was asked to extend their October meeting, and I'll be talking about some of the developments that are going on in Brook Township. That's from my end. Anything else to add? No? All right, let's go. We don't have Don Johnson present, so
I do have his report.
You have a report?
I do, saving Miranda
yes.
her ability to have to publish.
Excuse me, just for one moment. I'm not sure if everyone has met Miranda.
So Miranda Costa, yeah, she is our latest administrative assistant. She was brought on 2 years ago to do social media posts 1 year, and then this previous year she has been brought on to do more tasks and is driving the website development, which should be going live here in the next couple weeks.
And middle of October.
Middle of October, yep. So she's taking on more responsibility, kind of going through some of the zoning and hearing Saldo classes to kind of move more into public service at such a young age. So,
Okay.
road department reports,
Yes.
my apologies. The stormwater, the storm sewer job on Sipley Road is completed. It took the road department about 2 weeks to complete that, replacing some pipe that had caved in right near the entrance to the park. They finished seeding it last week and grass is already growing. Our annual line painting was done on the 12th of this month. The road crew will be trimming trees back in developments this fall. And Don, the Director of Public Works, would like to remind residents to keep trash cans behind the curbs and not on the streets. Especially when it's snowing, sometimes get covered and they'll get knocked over by the plow. Additionally, there's an ordinance to not blow any rubbish into the roadways, and that includes grass, leaves, or snow onto the streets. The road department was pretty hard to get the snow off. I would just say if there was someone who's unable to clear their driveway and it's cleared up by the plow back into the township, to give us a call. If someone's elderly or infirm, I'd be more than happy to authorize the township crew to go back out with the skid steer and just shovel it. We'd much prefer to take care of it ourselves than just have them keep pushing it back into the road. And that is all he has to report on.
Okay. I did get some comments on the tree trimming on the Elbrook Drive that the residents weren't aware. I didn't know we were getting trees trimmed on when they were done. A lot of branches were left behind and they just weren't expecting that. So I don't know how we can communicate to in advance to say if the crew will be out during the week.
So I can see if Don can work with Miranda here, who does our public postings and social media, and maybe Don can give us an idea of what neighborhoods the road department will be in for the tree removal and the cutbacks, and we can post that so residents can be aware. Obviously, if they believe we're leaving stuff behind, it can be an oversight. Obviously, it's not intentional, so again, anybody who's called the township administration building, we'd be happy to correct any issues that we had over, just didn't catch up.
Just on a side issue, the hornet's nest is one of my trees, so I would give them a heads up. They trimmed around, and I've been waiting till it gets cold before I touch that branch. All right, and the line painting on Beaver Dam, let's work with it. All right, that should do public works. We'll go to executive by the administration. So,
I'm going to cover that as well. It is in the agenda packet that is out to the public, so they'll have the manager's report and the executive assistant's report. And Christy did produce this before she left for training, listed as being completed on September 13th. She noted that the Honeybrook Community Partnership met on the 12th, one last time before Harmony Day, which is this Saturday. And the details were published in the Tri-County Record and on the honeybrookpartnership.com website. Flyers are also available this evening. The staff had left them out next to the agendas. It says, please come out and cheer on your friends for the pickleball tournament, which is going to be running from 8 to 10:30 on Saturday at Humboldt Park. The next item for the partnership is to make a Difference Day project, and the details will be announced as soon as they are available. Next, Christy noted that the Chester County Health Department dropped off schedules for their flu vaccine clinics in September and October. You can see that little sign out front of our office. Registration is open at chesco.org/flu. You can also call 610-344-6225. Copies of the schedule are also available in the lobby of our administration building. As I just previously mentioned, introducing Miranda, the new website is due to launch in mid-October, making it a perfect time to open a donation site for Toys for Tots. We will have our standard box to collect toys in the lobby, but those who prefer to donate cash, which is also appreciated, the online drive will be a way to do that. We have also offered to be a collection point for the Western Chester County donation sites, since Toys for Tots is looking for more spots to maintain their donations until they pick them up. Finally, it looks like the administration office had a long week issue with the Facebook page. We have resolved it. Our account was flagged because the post contained links to the township website, which for some reason were considered malicious by Facebook, for false information by the powers that be in cyberspace. That is a Christie sentence. The website, as always, has up-to-date information, and meeting announcements are pushed out through readychesco.org. And that is all of her report.
the question on the website, could we have a preview of that, the October workshop meeting?
Sure, Miranda, do you know it's due to launch?
October 24th or 26th. I get on the website October 15th, but I can access it now.
Yeah.
So if you would like, we can definitely show you guys the website. It will not be 100% complete ready to go, but the vast majority of it is pretty much available. So we should be able to do that.
Yeah, I'll have Miranda send the board links to it. It is active, obviously, just for the board's knowledge. Miranda's going through advanced training, so she'll be able to add web pages, pull down menus, do all the active changing. And while Civic Plus provides support, it's also available for Miranda to essentially take control of the website and change layouts, additions. So she'll be working with the various boards and committees to ensure that their little sub-pages have all the information that they'd like to promote for their department rec, land press, etc.
Very good. Township manager report.
Surprisingly, I'm going to be do what I always do and ask you to read the report that's available. It's attached to the public agenda, and the board has access to it, so not belabor my amount of speaking tonight. I'll be happy to answer any questions the board has if they do so. If it's relevant now or at any point privately.
Deborah, you want to do the village green, that was item 4, that's for mine. Anything else? All right, then, Land Preservation Committee. Any other thing? I'm looking for out there. I don't see anyone in the audience, but.
Christy usually speaks for them. She didn't leave me anything. Their agenda, their meeting minutes are in there. I will say that John Goodall and I met with Shane a few weeks ago to see how we can start promoting the land preservation program and getting it more out to those farmers that are able to join. So,
Well, in the past, a letter has been sent out to the farmers who have not participated in the program, and I think that's pretty much covers.
So we're generating a list of all TPNs, tax parcel numbers, and Shane is going to try to get a little bit of training for any volunteers in the township who want to maybe come and knock some doors with the farmers, just to let them know the program exists, a little bit of how-to sheet, what to do, and what type of material we can give, so maybe there's a face-to-face contact versus the letter, because I know most items I get the LTV end in my circular trash receptacle before and after, so this might be another way we can knock on the door. And obviously, it'll be mailed out, the ASA notifications to anybody that should be into the ag and security area, so.
Was it?
Was it, right.
It's not
And-
all prospective.
Right, and then there will be posts, so we're just looking at ways to.
It's just that we've had that discussion years ago about having people walk up to the Amish and knocking on their doors and say, you want to join this program?
This is more of
without
a,
preview, you know.
yeah, this is more of a, hello, we notice you have a farm that's very beautiful, have you heard of the land preservation program? Would you mind us if we just gave you this single page paper and here's a contact number for John Goodall, should be your interest, then you have a great day and not really go into the weeds.
All right.
Maybe just give them another introduction.
Yeah. Good. All right, planning commission, so I see Mary or Mike.
Yeah, Gary's obviously here, and we only have one agenda item so far. I'm sorry, can you just wait this? I'm sorry, I missed the other member. We only have one item so far for this month's meeting. It's a lot annexation plan. There are several items on the agenda upcoming in your for action this evening that were recommended by the planning commission. So, if you folks have anything to add, if not, that's all I have tonight.
All right, good. All right. Are we back to park and recreation, or is it still recreation and park?
It's Rec and Park.
All right.
I believe we can just refer to it as we wish, but we do have the document here.
Yes.
If you'd like to give your report.
Sure. You know, we met last week over at Humble Park and just run a little tour to around and we made some lists and we're going to be discussing them next week at our meeting.
Okay.
And we have a lot of new members on the board, so we're all getting up to speed. We're all looking forward to it.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They did make a request for me to join, so I will be participating with them
Okay.
next week.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, I failed to mention, I had a little battle with the tree branch, and I didn't put any antibiotic on it, so it got infected, and that's what the bandage is for. So if anybody calls me Vincent, I'll respond to you. All right, take a look at new business. Approve, not approve the list of bills for payment as prepared by the treasurer. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Item 2, upward instruments tax parcel number 23363, land development, construction of a new 35,170 square foot warehouse, office, food processing building at 5064 Horseshoe Pike.
John, we do have someone here from Commonwealth Engineers.
All right, good.
Turn it over to Mike.
Mike, welcome.
My name is Mike Cowan with Commonwealth Engineers. We're representing other investments on the current owner of the property.
Yes.
And like you just read, they're looking to expand their business by building approximately 35,000 square foot building consisting of office and warehouse. Associated parking and then stormwater controls. They are proposing to connect to both public water and sewer. And PennDOT is restricting one of their accesses to an exit only. So we're working through some of that, and we're here, we have a couple of waivers that we're looking to get approvals on, and looking for a preliminary final approval.
Board have any questions on that? Mike?
And And just for the board, you should have a copy of the August 25th letter that outlines the planning commission's recommendations of approval for all of the waivers as reflected in that letter, and then
Yes.
also a recommendation of conditional preliminary final plan, provided the items in our last review letter of August 15th are met. That includes all the items, outside agencies, and all the other remaining items of the ordinance that would have to be met as part of the overall approval. I can answer any questions you have about the waivers or the plan itself, or
Yeah, I'm not, are there any questions on this one?
I just have a question. I think it's item 5, it's the basement discharge is 5 foot from the property line.
Right.
Does the adjoining property, is it owned by the same owner, or?
It is owned by, actually, the developer. So they're, Richard Hoover, and yes, and we do have a letter from them consenting to the discharge close to the property.
they're also proposing and helping on this might, I think it's a vegetated level spreader that you're proposing at the discharge point, so it's actually introducing it back into a sheet flow condition.
Right.
So it's not a point concentrated discharge that will create erosion or a potential issue. So there is a BMP at the end of that discharge point as well, even though it's located within the area identified by your ordinance for setback. It does have a level spreader at the end.
And it doesn't have to, who monitors that?
That would be the responsibility of the developer or the owner of the property would have to be the owner who maintain that stormwater system. They'll have to enter into an agreement as part of the plan.
That agreement would be with the township.
Correct,
You know,
yes.
which gives the township rights, should they not maintain it, that the township can intervene and force them to, or do it themselves and impose the costs on the landowner. If it comes to that.
Yeah, that's right.
And just one request, could you turn that towards the audience so they have an opportunity to see what we're talking about? And I think that's good, yeah, just if anybody has any questions, I just want to make sure they know what's that. All right, I guess we can move to the motion then, no further questions?
I'll make the motion, well, we did need separate motions, or can we do one motion to?
It looks like under A, we have 5 items, and then there's a motion B.
Just do 2 separate.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I make a motion under A for the 5 items listed between 1 and 5?
So I hear a motion to grant, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do I hear a motion to grant, not grant conditional preliminary final plan approval contingent upon compliance with Tech-Con review letter dated August 15, 2023? Do I hear a motion to grant?
I'll make a motion to grant.
Do I hear a second?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, that will take us to item 3, subdivision land development plan, Twin County Business Park, extension of Westbrook Drive, creation of 7 industrial lots.
Oh, dark that you're a vote, man. All right, I'll sit right back down. I'm trying to. That's all right.
So, yeah, my name's Mike Allen, for representing Queen County Business Park LLC, what they're going to do is consolidate a few parcels, and then subdivide the main parcel into 7 industrial lots. This kind of shows the annexation of all the pieces that are involved. here's the subdivision of the 7 lots. And then they're looking to put, obviously, industrial buildings on each of the lots, associated parking, stormwater controls. Each lot has their own stormwater controls, but the entire subdivision is controlled in a stormwater basin that is on this lot here. Now, let's see if I have that. So here's kind of, that shows the buildings. And then we are looking to extend Westbrook Drive, which ends in the cul-de-sac here currently, out, and then to Route 10. We're working with PennDOT on the access of this. We're still in the process of that.
So that's the proximity to Todd Road, is it?
Say again?
Is that proximity to Todd Road?
Yeah, it's about 900, a little over 900 feet.
Yeah.
In relation to that stormwater basin on the top right-hand corner, where's that little red house? Is it on the?
Yeah, so it's right here.
It's right there, okay.
Yeah. So the basin is mostly here. We have kind of kept it away from town a little bit. And so it does come up like close to the mouth. I don't think it shouldn't affect that much. And we will be buffering with vegetation, with lands between that property and the development.
Do you have any further questions on that? All right, just one motion. So do I hear a motion to grant, not grant, conditional preliminary plan approval contingent upon compliance with economic review letter dated August 22nd, 2023, and the following plan commission recommendations. A, proposed number of hollow trees should be reduced and a mix of other species provided. And B, street lighting should be provided along West Brook and not just at intersections for safety and security.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll look at item 4, which is a motion to support the proposal from Natural Lands Trust for preserving approximately 24 acres on Beaver Dam Road, tax parcel number 2210 14.1, 2210 14.2. Carries all the way out to 2210-32 at a cost not to exceed $76,375 plus the cost of an updated appraisal, provided that it's shown that the lots are accessible and the appraised value has not decreased.
So this came out of plan preservation. This property had been considered a few times in the past due to the funding. From my understanding, they elected this to go with properties that were being applied for that were agricultural in nature.
Yes.
This does meet the requirements for usage of our open space funds, and we have more than enough funds to cover our costs to preserve the 24 acres.
So is it a mixture or is it the 24 acres?
I think the 24 acres is mostly yes, correct. So again, the Brandywine Conservancy did assist them, and they handed them off to the Natural Lands Trust, which handles the woodlands.
Yes.
And again, Shane's not here, but he does, give I'm sorry, land preservation and support going forward with this motion to support.
I think these are the wood lots that are those little small lots owned by Mr. Kiefer.
Yes, they are Mr. Kiefer's property.
Yeah, and if I remember right, I believe that's adjacent to the old All Seasons Campground, which is also now as part of State Park. So I think it's adjacent to that, because I don't know that there's any. Yeah, it'd be to the north of that property. It's just over the hill from that area. previous grandfathers.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we have a recommendation from Land Preservation Committee. Do I hear a motion to support?
I'll make a motion to support.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item 5, public hearing for ordinance 209-2023, amending and restating Chapter 22 of the Township Code of Ordinances, subdivision and land development ordinance. So I turn over to Beth.
Yes. Yes, this is the time and place as advertised for a public hearing on proposed ordinance number 209-2023, amending and restating in its entirety the township's subdivision and land development ordinance, which is chapter 22 of the township's code of ordinances. As required by the municipality's planning code in Pennsylvania, we are required to conduct a public hearing prior to the board considering enactment of that ordinance. That hearing has been advertised in the daily local news with copies of the ordinance available for inspection during the advertising period. A few preliminary comments to the board. I do know that there were some comments regarding this matter at the workshop meeting last week, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that there was a request for comments in writing from concerned citizens at that time. The township did receive, to my knowledge, 2 sets of written comments, that is the total. And the board did receive from my office a memorandum addressing those comments. And so for purposes of the public hearing, I would suggest that it would be appropriate that we introduce each of those 2 sets of comments and the memorandum that was prepared by myself dated September 12th, addressing those comments for the board's information as exhibits into the hearing. If it is the board's wish, I can address some of the substance of the responses that Mike and I have assembled for the board's benefit to the public if you like, prior to allowing public comment, if you think it's worth doing that, just to kind of at the outset establish the legalities of the position for why the language is what it is. If you think that's appropriate, or we can just open up to the public at this time.
Provide some background first.
Yeah, it makes sense for me to explain.
Okay. So I'm just going to work from the memo that I had shared with the board. The first set of comments, as were 3 comments that really focused on the issue of the sketch plan requirements. And there were comments, frankly, in both sets of comments that wanted a sketch plan to be a shall rather than a may, because may seems permissive. Under the municipality's planning code, we have obligations to review and act upon any required submission. And so typically, there are actually more risks to a municipality if you don't make sketch plans clearly optional, because you run risks of deemed approvals. If someone submits something conceptual that arguably is a sketch plan, then we run risks of deemed approvals, because the township has an obligation to approve or deny a submission, and if they don't do so within the proper period, there could be an argument to the township's detriment regarding that approval. Keeping them optional also does allow for some meaningful initial dialogue with whoever it is, whether it's a small local business that wants to do an expansion, sort of as we just saw, all the way up to a large development as some that the township has seen, just to understand kind of and have an informal dialogue before they go through detailed engineering on something that perhaps they could shift gears on earlier in the process. So from my perspective, and I think Mike shares that perspective, it really is cleanest and protects the municipality to keep those an optional tool. The second piece here, in terms of financial security for maintenance improvements, this is a comment about page 33, to change a may to a shall. The language that we have proposed here exactly mirrors the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code regarding maintenance security. And the township does always require that maintenance security be proposed. That is part of the township's standard development improvements agreement that every developer on a land development project signs before recording the development plan. And board, please chime in with questions. There's a comment about page 45, section 602. Generally, it is existing language. We have not proposed any changes. The comment relates to consistent and harmonious development of other proposals. Our suggestion here is that there's really no reason to change this. We're not proposing changes at this time. And also, just for the record, there's a comment in here that references the DR Horton plan. This change would have no effect because the DR Horton plan has been submitted, and so it is reviewed on the current ordinance, not anything proposed. There's a comment about the 612 traffic impact studies, wanting it always to be a Department of Transportation approved traffic study. The staff response, the proposed amendment further clarifies that the requirement of traffic studies beyond what currently exists in the Saldo are much more prescriptive and enforceable. So Mike has worked hard to put together language that is used widely in this region that has a lot more requirements on developers and clarity. But there is, if there's nothing specific to PennDOT's requirements that necessarily are what the township needs to be using. We've crafted things that are appropriate for a municipality of this nature where it involves local roads. But any project involving PennDOT roadways would obviously be reviewed by PennDOT and be subject to their review and their study standards, including permitting. Streetlights, there was a suggestion that, so the proposed language basically changed to say that the proposed language says that streetlights shall be provided. The residents suggested that they may be installed with the discretion of the supervisors. There was some discussion about this. Our response is that while the resident believes no street lighting should be required, the only word being proposed as part of this amendment is the use of the word generally. The rest of the section is remaining unchanged, and there's no further changes to the amendment, and the board always has the ability to make a modification of the ordinance to not require them where site-specific conditions dictate. There's two comments about section 625, recreation and open space land. The first, in substance, is a change wanting it to say that the board requires a fee in lieu of dedication of land for recreation and open space. We cannot do that. By law, all a municipality is allowed to require is the dedication of land for that purpose. We have the ability to, with the developer's offering, accept a fee in lieu, but we do not have the ability to require it. So, request in the this provides context in which the township's general policy is to request a fee in lieu, but we cannot require it. And then there's some comments about fee structure. What we've done currently, the township's fee schedule resolution also includes these fees from the ordinance. Because we would like to change those over time, we've pulled the fees out of the ordinance itself and have just referenced that they would be adopted by resolution from time to time. And that way, as the costs of land increase, we can in fact adjust those without going through a full-blown ordinance amendment, advertising and the costs of a Saldo amendment just to change the fees. Comments regarding wetland professionals. The comment says, so the language is a recognized professional with competence in the field shall review aerial photographs, soils, geologic and other available related data as the data relates to the subject property, and the professional shall also conduct a site inspection of the property. The comment is that we should specify what the certification requirements are for a recognized professional. The use of the terminology that we selected here is standard and typical of that used in current Saldo language. And the professional that prepares the report does have to provide a listing of their experience and qualifications. actual expertise, not just a certification. So going out and getting the wetlands delineation certificate may not be adequate if you don't have adequate experience. And so that's part of the review that happens when those studies are submitted. Section 901 about relief from unnecessary hardship. Essentially, this is the section of the ordinance that allows you to grant waivers, as we did on plans that were before you tonight. It gives the board the ability, where circumstances are appropriate, to grant those modifications, and there's legal standards that drive when and where that's appropriate. This comment wanted that removed, but it is standard practice, and we must have that language and that ability to really practically use this ordinance. And then under penalties, essentially the current ordinance provides in terms of penalties for a violation, the judgment of not more than $500 plus all court costs. The comment is that it should be much higher. We are limited as to the amount of penalties that we can impose civilly under a township ordinance. We have the ability to impose penalties daily, as well as seek other remedies by court for violations, but we are limited and we cannot just create giant fines right out the gates for a one-time, one-day type violation. But they are cumulative, so an ongoing violation can in fact become quite costly. On the second set of comments, you will see the first three are essentially identical to the first issue we talked about on the sketch plans and the distinction between shall and may. So I'm not going to kind of reiterate that. Under the traffic impact study comment here, there's a request to have some language indicating that studies not being performed during summer months, when potentially vacations, school traffic are not in place. And the comments acknowledge, but this is typically part of the discussion that's held in pre-application meetings with the developers, our consultants, and the township about the scope of the traffic study and when counts will be taken. The parameters of those studies do have to be acceptable to the township or its consultant reviewing traffic studies that are submitted. We have the ability to essentially criticize their study and second guess it and make them try again if we believe the assumptions under studies that are submitted are insufficient to in fact protect the township traffic-wise, that such that improvements are provided that would be adequate. Those types of predicting all of those nuances are not usually spelled out in the Saldo, but they are part of the review process and why we have traffic professionals contracted to review these things. The recreation and open space land, again, is wanting us to put require instead of request, which I addressed, we cannot require the fee in lieu, and putting back all present fees. And then there's also a comment about section 703, which relates to mobile home parks. If the board reviewed this in detail, you will see that we have taken out some of the dimensional elements related to mobile home parks. This comment indicates that this is allowing a much higher density. The reality is that there were provisions in both the subdivision and land development ordinance and the zoning ordinance which were inconsistent, and those types of dimensional requirements do remain in zoning, which is not something that can be waived by the board. And that is the appropriate place for that, and so for sake of clarity and to avoid conflicts between provisions, which in fact would deem them arguably unenforceable, we have chosen to streamline the pieces of that section to the things that are subdivision and land development ordinance appropriate, and left the other things in zoning. There's no content as a whole that we've removed from the township code. It just resides somewhere within this ordinance. So I just wanted to go through that for the board's benefit, because we did have people take the time to make comments, which I'm confident the board appreciates. It is a voluminous document. Again, there's not a ton of substance that is being changed with this amendment, but we want everyone to understand what was involved. So at this time, as part of the public hearing, I would open the floor to anyone from the public who has comments to make on the ordinance. I would, with the board's blessing, at the outset, I think it would be appropriate to try to stick to a 3-minute time period to give everyone a chance, and depending on the number of individuals interested in making comments,
frankly defer to the board in terms of expanding that. Does that sound good, a good way to?
Yeah, we'll start with 3 minutes if there's additional comments.
Very good.
Yes, go ahead.
Valerie Schultz, 165 Caitlin Court. So with respect to the items that you indicated that was standard and typical wording, you're not saying that there is any reason legally that additional specifics can't be added in. So why not add some clarity just to ensure the public confidence that, that there are adequate professional expertise, in the wetlands assessment, that there are certain things that are going to be done correctly. I understand when you're saying legally there's certain things that you can't do, but saying that something is standard and typical just means that you're discounting, making that more specific. I would say for the land requirements, one of the things that I think should be clarified further, when you talked about, eliminating all hazards to life, health, property of flood, fire, disease, there's nowhere in that document that I saw how that's actually going to be ensured. This is a really grand statement that I don't see specified anywhere else in the document. So, if that's not going to be specified how that's going to be ensured, then that needs to be, I would suggest, be eliminated. One of the concerning parts about the 22-625 recreational and open space is specifically the wording where it says the board shall reserve the right to revise these requirements by allowing reduced recreational facilities and/or reduced fees on a case-by-case basis. So why was it specifically spelled out that you can reduce the requirements? I'm not exactly sure why that. I don't think that's, there's no justification for potentially reducing it other than to benefit the developer. And as far as granting a hardship, I know in one of the zoning hearing board meetings I went to where the builder requested a variance, and he claimed hardship because the economy had gone downhill. There was absolutely no documentation he had to provide to prove that this was going to impact on him economically in a significant way. So again, I think adding more specifics in here, I think would enable the township to really not allow developers to just come in and use this claim of hardship so loosely. Thank you.
Comments? Yes.
Susan Jones, 20 Cupola Road. Set of comments that you have received. Thank you for your review and taking the time to clarify some of that information. Just one thing I want to add with the traffic impact study. The one that was done on Cupola was done in August. I'm not sure if that was for Horton's development or not, but since it's going to exit on the Cupola, I would assume that. The other day at 3:45, there were like 10 cars in line on Cupola, and 7:45 in the morning, 4 buses in less than 30 seconds. So if you're reviewing the traffic impact study on a development as large as that one is proposed to be, please take into consideration that the count, if it was done during the summer, it has a lot of people on vacation, the schools, the buses constantly up and down Cupola. So just ask that you take that into consideration. And thank you again for your review of those comments.
Is there anyone else in the room that has comments?
Do you have additional comments?
I'm just going to go to Zoom.
Okay.
Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to make comments as part of the public hearing?
I see you.
Okay, I hear none on Zoom. Sir?
Bob Stein, 15 Caitlin Court. Val had brought up several questions questions. My question is, will these be answered, or are these just comments being made so you can see what people are thinking, or are we going to get a response in some way, shape, or form for the questions that were asked?
So I think at this time, as part of the public hearing, this is the opportunity for hearing of the public. The next item on the agenda is, well, after the closing of the public hearing, the board has potential to make a motion for enactment or not, and that would be the time to deliberate and have any discussion that they see appropriate prior to acting or not acting on that agenda item, if that's fair. The board has the ability to make their own comments during the public hearing if they want
I
to.
understand that, but when people make comments or ask questions, I do think it's upon the board to try to at least respond to those questions. Generally, we see no responses. It's not a criticism, just a statement of fact. It would be better if we had some responses so we know that A, was understood, and B, we walk out of here with a better understanding of what's going on instead of no more understanding. Thank you.
Comments? All right. What I heard just now, to like go ahead and just think, some of those questions are still raising some doubts. And, you know, I feel I want to ensure that when this gets adopted, that we do have the support of the community on this. Since this has gone on for a few months, where we missed some of our workshop meetings where we could have used that time for some of these comments and some of these discussions, and this thing started a few years ago, there doesn't seem to be a pressing, that this has to, pressing deadline that this has to be done tonight. I would say that if we wanted to open up for one last round of in the workshop, clarify any of the questions that were asked this evening, and then move this to our October meeting for a vote.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I have a question about it. If we did not enact this tonight, then we would have potentially another public hearing, is that correct?
Technically, as long as the ordinance remains unchanged, we do not need another public hearing. But if we would change anything, we would need another public hearing. In any event, we would need to re-advertise the ordinance if we're going to consider its enactment at a separate meeting.
So what I heard, clarification on the wetlands, skills. I mean, I know from some of my experience that you can have 5 different wetlands professionals, and they're going to come up with 5 different conclusions. Depends on their perspective, what classification system they use, and so forth. I don't know if it's if we're going to defer to like the Army Corps of Engineers using the hydrogeomorphic.
I was actually going to respond to that, John,
Yeah.
if you'd like, if
Go
that's
right
a
ahead.
concern you have. Your existing ordinance actually details that a jurisdictional determination can be required for any development.
Yeah.
So, and at the end of the day, they are the gospel and final determination of any wetland delineation that's done in the Commonwealth or let alone in the United States. So you already have that in your Saldo. Regardless of what the qualifications are, if the question comes up of is this person qualified enough or not enough, we have enough language in your existing Saldo that covers that. So if there is a doubt or there is a question mark or our review actually spawns some question, we can immediately require that jurisdictional determination, and the Army Corps will make that final call at the end of the day. So that maybe that addresses some of your concern from the wetland standpoint. We're not changing any language related to that requirement.
Is that consistent with what I heard in the questions? Does that provide clarification?
I'm not really sure. Well, I was addressing it to you, John. If you had that concern, is there a different form of language that you're looking for in the amendment?
Yeah, what we just heard, the board respond to some of the questions that were asked tonight. So and I called out the one that was asked on the wetlands. And Yeah, I'm clear on the fact that the final say would be the Army Corps of Engineers.
Right.
So, they can make mistakes. That's one of the things that we always know, that the process is not 100%. If there's a strong enough concern about who's being called in, do we need any further guidelines, or I'd have to go back and take a look at the Saldo. I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, if we may, I really think it would be appropriate to close the public hearing
Yeah.
at this time, now that we've heard from the public, and then, you know, if there is a motion for enactment that gets a second discussion, from my perspective, that would be the appropriate time to have some of this conversation. And I don't see a problem with responding necessarily to all the comments, but I think that kind of the back and forth dialogue as part of the hearing is not the purpose of the hearing at this stage.
So we closed out the questions were raised, had an opportunity for the board to respond, and now we close our hearing.
Correct. So is there a motion to close the public hearing on this ordinance?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right. Question to, let's see, I have Mal, Sue, and Bob. Your questions raised tonight, did you feel that you had sufficient information to close it to your questions? Bob?
I really didn't hear responses to any things that were brought up. I'm just asking.
The
if
fee
there is
being
going
lower,
to be-
no one said anything about that.
Susan, you have a question on the traffic study? So I'm still hearing that there's not full satisfaction on some of these questions, so I'm making a proposal that we just hold further discussion in our next workshop, and then at that point, if we should ask for final focus on in our next, on the next meeting. That's my thought.
Again, this is the board's decision,
Yes.
just procedurally, so you are aware. If there are amendments made to this ordinance, of substance, we likely will have to resend this to the county and township planning commissions for their re-review. I have no skin in the game, those are costs and time, as well as the additional advertising that the township bears in the process. Just from, I think, Mike and I, our perspective, this was really intended as a cleanup of certain focused items that we saw problems. It does not preclude starting the process again to further see if there are ways in which we can enhance and improve. I don't think either of us believe that this is a perfect saldo for the township, but there's nothing that would stop us from restarting the process tomorrow to further improve upon things if we think there's a need. So,
We did have a discussion earlier that said that with the comp plan review, there's a potential of looking at Saldo again.
You can look at Saldo anytime you want, as Beth said, you can make a motion, you can pass the amendments tonight, and then start working on a more in-depth dive into Saldo tomorrow. Again, like Beth said, just to reiterate, this is kind of firming up the changes that came about because of our 2018 zoning. This is really making sure those two documents align.
All right, I get that point. I just feel that, some of the questions that were raised tonight, if I'm not hearing satisfaction to your responses, I would feel that we would hurt to have one more discussion at the workshop. So that's where my position, I'm just here to the board now.
Well, I think I talked about it earlier.
Yep.
And I think that our comprehensive plan, which we have to have a 20-year planning horizon for our comp plan, and then we do the one municipal, where we change the zoning, and then this is sort of the third leg of that, right, where we're updating Saldo to be more,
So we missed the
Coherent.
window, from the last round. It's right here. Okay.
no, I don't think there is.
Pretty much in line.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like the third leg on the tripod. This
Yeah.
is this is the third thing that we have to do, and as you know, we've already discussed looking at our comp plan. So here we are, right back at the beginning at step one, and then to step two, and then
Yeah, to your point, what triggered this, I understand that in 2019, this work was looked at and then it wasn't finished, so now we're just finishing it up now. So is that last leg you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, I think this was started right when Steve was here.
This is a multi-year project, so that had been going on, again, it had been one of many items the municipality is working on. It just came to the point where I came on board. One of my requests of the professional staff was to get this across the finish line.
Right.
So this was driven because I started last year.
Yes.
I believe I want to, again, ensure that Saldo is matching up with our zoning changes. Not saying we cannot immediately look at this tomorrow. And again, it sounds like a lot of the comments that came up tonight have nothing to do with the amendments that we're requesting. It's just a larger overview of Saldo in general. So I don't think not having a motion tonight just to clean it up.
Naturally, not starting
We've done the work.
Yeah, I'm acknowledging the work, I'm just saying that I'm not hearing satisfaction from the people who raised the question. That's my concern.
Understood. And again, like I've said before, you know, the board, it looks out for the community, all of them. And we take in everyone's public comment, but, you know, you have to think of what's best for the community. And it may be moving forward with the amendments to tighten up Saldo this evening, and then at next month's discussion, we can bring up with the board if they should take a more detailed look to maybe make Saldo more encompassing based upon the comments you heard tonight. I think the comments tonight do not have to do with the language that we're proposing for the amendment.
The fees, no one addressed the fees being lowered.
There are no fees being lowered.
There's a statement in there that says that.
Lowering,
It's existing language.
but why not address it while you're working on it instead of putting it through and then going back and looking at it?
Do it right the first time. Well, no, wait, as a resident, I completely understand what I'm saying. So, I get it. So, as a resident, I'm happy with that answer.
Well, we're not arguing on that. We just heard a point made here, and.
So this resident understood it,
Yeah,
and
good,
in my opinion, I understand it, so I'm happy with it.
good, thank you.
It makes sense to me.
Good.
So that's my opinion on that.
But I still have a few residents that are saying that they haven't felt they got a satisfactory answer. And rather than approve it and then start another round of Saldo, that's one approach. Or give it one more round and then finalize it. So that's all we're trying to accomplish tonight.
So just to make sure the board understands, any member can offer to make the motion right now.
Yes, I understand.
So if a board member wishes to make the motion on number 6, they can do so and see if it gets a second.
All right, so I'm
So
making the motion, yeah, you make a
I'm
motion?
sorry, in reality, so we're making the existing Saldo better, and then if we choose to, we can go back and take more of a deep dive into Saldo and make some changes.
But
that are more
there's
current.
3 or 4, yeah, but there's 3 or 4 things that were called out that the residents don't understand. That's why I'm trying to bring closure to that. Whether it's done tonight, next month, whatever way we want to do it, let's get this wrapped up. All I'm hearing from a few of the residents, not all of the residents, are saying that there's a few outstanding questions.
So I guess that concerns if we have a conversation next month and people aren't satisfied, then what?
Well,
It just goes on for 2.
Yeah,
Again,
that's-
I'd much rather make sure that we tighten up our Saldo right now, and if the board wants to revisit it, again, I don't have a vote in this.
yeah,
This, the professional staff have made a very large commitment.
and we made a good presentation to the audience, went through this, and, thank you, Beth, for going through all those questions. But the fact at the end of the day, the residents are the deciding factor. Whether we have 4 or 40 or just one person, we're just making sure that we have some satisfaction from the residents on this. And since this has no deadline, that's why I threw out and said, well, we could wait one more month and then If those questions are still outstanding, I would just put it to another vote and say, okay, we can close it and do it during the next round of the comp plan. And over at that point.
So if I was gonna make a motion, is now the time to do it?
If you want to make a motion.
I'm gonna make a motion to accept the proposed amendments.
Okay.
I'll second.
You said, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All against? I'll vote against that. Okay.
Well, better is still better.
What's that?
Better is better.
Yeah, we did make some progress, I think, to acknowledge that. All right, let's move on to the next item. Recommendation, let's see. Close the hearing. Motion to enact, not enact ordinance 210, 2023, amending and restarting chapter 20 of the Township Code of Ordinances, stormwater management.
So just for the sake of the board, I'll give you a very brief overview of this. We have an existing, chapter 20 covers stormwater management. It's based on a countywide Act 167 ordinance that was agreed to by all the municipalities in Chester County to address MS4 issues and NPDES regulations. So as a result of that, every 8 to 10 years, there are amendments proposed similarly like we just did for Saldo, to update that ordinance, make it more in kind with the current NPDES regulations, and also comply with our MS4 permit with the DEP. So all the changes in this were discussed with, again, all of the municipalities in Chester County. They were all agreed to, and we're all adopting it. We have a deadline requirement of adopting it this fall, so that's what the amendment is proposing. Essentially, we're keeping 80 to 90% of what was already there. We're just adding to it to comply with that MS4 and NPDES. I can answer questions if you have any. They're obviously more of a technical nature, but they're here before you tonight for adoption.
One problem with the explanation. All right. Do I hear any questions from the board? Motion to enact.
I'll make the motion to approve.
So here's a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion to approve, not approve the transfer of $800,000 from the Recreation Fund to the Land Preservation Fund, contingent upon completion of the grant award for the modified Phase 1 of the James A. Humble Memorial Park.
So John, very quickly, obviously it's been brought up at numerous meetings, both here and preservation, Brook Park, that the Township Board of Supervisors, over the course of 3 budgetary seasons, have approved 3 separate $400,000 transfers. 2 of them had gone through. The last transfer was not approved by the board, did not go through. Hearing the public's comments about the usage of open space funds, the Land Preservation Committee displeasure with it. The recommendation from Land Pres, which I agree with the manager, is to allow that Phase 1 to be completed, which, as the board is aware, is the skate park. The rec fund has about $1.1 million, so we should have enough to cover it. Obviously, if we don't, the goal would be during this year's budgetary discussions is to ensure that we have appropriate funding from the general fund back into rec to cover that amount. And once we're satisfied that Phase 1 can be completed, we can then go ahead and have this transfer back, this interfund transfer into the 2024 budget.
All right, thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that takes care of new business. Do we have any other new business? I don't see anything listed for.
Yeah, again, sorry, John, the other new business is just anything that the board wishes to bring up for discussion. Old business, again, there's nothing on there, but it doesn't preclude anybody from bringing something up.
We can now move to item J, the open forum. Do I hear anything on this side of the room? Any public comment? Yes, please.
Charles Hannah. Has Village Green been completed totally? When will that be done? Do we have any movement on that?
We're waiting on the developer. There's still some open items that have not been finished.
And is there any way to get them to finish?
Well, I think we said that we would put money in escrow if at some point it has to get completed.
And then the other thing is, I don't know why we have a saldo at all if you can just come up here and say, oh, I want to do this instead, I want to put a drain pipe 5 foot from my line, and then you guys just approve it. I mean, stormwater management, we'll accept it, and then we'll just change, we'll do whatever we want. Why do we have rules if someone can just come in front and just change whatever they want so that they can build their big building? Because it doesn't fit the plan if they build it a different way. You guys just give them, okay, move this, I mean, 5 items, no one questioned why. I don't understand. You guys just need to look into stuff a little bit.
Any other questions on this side? Okay. Yes? No? Okay. On this side of the room, we have to take that.
Valerie Schultz, I just want to say the fact that there was no attempt to answer my question about why the open space requirement or fee could be reduced was extremely disrespectful and rude. I read a 138-page document which some members of your planning commission had a really hard time getting through. It was no small feat to go through. I would have at least appreciated a respectful response to that. This is our document too, and there's no point of having a public hearing if you're not going to consider it. When you open up review of the saldo, whether or not it's a change you made or not, the public should be able to make comments on that. And I can absolutely 100% guarantee you guys are never going to go back to saldo and consider those comments. Because, yeah, some people you just want to completely disregard. That was really disrespectful.
Susan?
Susan Jones, with regards to Chestnut Tree and Route 322. Again, bring up about the traffic light. The other night, I almost became a statistic. There were no cars on the road. It was 7:45 at night. There was a Chevy Suburban coming out of Chestnut Tree, sitting there waiting. I'm 50 feet from the intersection, no other cars, and this car pulls out in front of me. Horn, brakes, I pulled the right, I missed hitting his rear by 4 feet. Yeah, my heart was, look where you are right now, I was, and there were no other cars. It's not like we were speeding, it was like, no, he just pulled out. If there had been a traffic light there, that wouldn't have happened. So I just would like to request again that it be going back to the developer or Horton, and revisit the PennDOT report. I'm not sure the year, I heard the other night they were talking 2015 or 2018. It was brought up at the last meeting. PennDOT's comments apparently about a light being warranted for that. So, I mean, when there's only 2 cars there and there's almost an accident, and now you're gonna have 700 cars, and then also whatever they're gonna do up at either Cupola or Burdell with the road and the accidents.
It's going to start looking like the intersection of 82 and 322.
Yeah.
It gets back.
Where there is a light.
Yes.
Yeah.
And 2 points this afternoon, I did witness East Brandywine across from the police station. There's that side road, the development. People cannot get out of there. I've witnessed where in the past where police patrolman will come out of the building, get his car, and then get in the middle of the intersection to direct traffic just to get the people out of that development. Today, this one guy just gave up, he just shot out right in front of the traffic, they had 4-car pile up. 322 is a problem, and we did have a task force on that. And essentially, it was thrown back to us that it's something we have to take up with PennDOT.
Because it's only gonna get worse.
It will. Thank you for your comment. Do I hear any further comments before we? Yes.
Sharon Custer Force, I also find it very disrespectful in regards to the Saldo. I don't understand why it couldn't have went on for at least another month to have people make personal comments. I felt as though it was a bully session up there with Beth and Warren and Laura and Tracy, against you, because they just want to get it done and over with. My thing is this, instead of just passing through to pass it through, and like I already said with Valerie, nobody's going to visit this Saldo again, ever. And it gives more for the developers to do whatever they want to do. We're the community, you know, and I'm just very disappointed in this all. It could have, you know, if you're going to do it, why don't you do it right the first time, and then you don't have to go back and have it redone.
Do I hear any further comments? All right.
What about, can we check Zoom?
Yes, thank you. Comments on Zoom? Yes?
My only comment would be this. During the legal hearing, Beth said that she felt as though she might not believe that it was a perfect amendment or review to the Saldo. If we were summing it up and we were cleaning it up, I feel as though maybe we should be going with something a little more close to perfect so that there would be some confidence.
Thank you. All right, and I do have one final comment, and that's on the audio for the our recordings. They're coming out very good on Zoom, but not as well on the YouTube. And I think we've been talking about this a few times, that we need to address that. An extra speaker in the back, or there's a couple of suggestions that I think we could consider with our budget coming up this round. Perhaps if we sat down with Mrs. Steelson, so that would, the problem is the fluctuation in the audio. Also, some people are sitting here with this high ceiling, you don't always get the best sound, and you know, we want to make sure that everybody comes out of this meeting hearing what actually has been spoken. Okay? That's my final question, comment tonight. Anything else from the board? Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. Have a good evening. We did. Okay, sorry. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. There we go.
Yeah.